Hello, welcome to another edition of CropLife Retail Week. I'm Eric Sfiligoj, editor of CropLife and CropLife Iron, here again with Lara Sowinski. Laura, I guess we survived Christmas. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Yes, survived Christmas, ate too much, blood sugar's too high. I'll be paying for this all throughout the month of January, I'm sure, as I'm eating nothing but like pickles and staying away from carbs. But charcuterie boards are very useful. They got nuts, they got meat, they got cheese. They come in handy. So,
Well, did Santa bring you a treadmill for Christmas?
no treadmill. I have a dog which walks me around the neighborhood twice a day. So that's a little better than a treadmill. Because
Oh,
again,
okay.
but
Yeah,
and again, the nice thing, of course, is she likes to pause and check out like spots in the yards. So that gives me the little wind break in between, so I can catch my breath as I'm walking her. So I'm okay with this.
wow.
So
Oh, that's good. Good.
yeah. So hey, so this is our last video that we'll be recording for 2024. So in honor of that, I thought it would be appropriate if you and I went over our, guess, two big takeaways from the calendar year we've just lived through. So I will start. The first thing I have to mention, of course, is the CropLife 100.
Mm-hmm.
Every year for the last 41 years, CropLife magazine and its predecessor, Farm Chemicals, used that to sort of gauge what's going on with our main audience, the ag retailers. And in 2024, actually, sorry to report that it wasn't the best of years. The marketplace had about revenue in the $43 billion range, but that was down from like 46, almost 47 billion in 2023. The big culprit, of course, as we said in our report, was fertilizer. That the revenues there were off about $2.5 billion. But I guess the takeaway there is, although the revenues were down, those mean the prices for most fertilizer, for most crop nutrients, were down from over the past 2 years. So again, usage rates stayed pretty steady, but because ag retailers were getting less per ton for their fertilizer, the revenues dropped accordingly. So again, if we get some moderation and things kind of stabilize, and maybe 25 things will bounce back up, we will have to see. But the one other thing to mention about the ag retailers, of course, the terms of profitability, only 28% of the ag retailers in the 2024 CropLife 100 said that they were more profitable than 2023, and that was down from 31% in 2023 that said they were more profitable. 51% said that their profit levels were identical. So again, hopefully those numbers will improve in 2025. We will have to wait and see. But again, the hope is things will turn around. But the one thing to keep an eye on, of course, is when revenues are like this, when profit margins are hard to come by, you see more consolidation. And I know in the 24 CropLife 100, there were 6 retailers on the 23 list that were not there in 2024 because of mergers or consolidation, and we'll have to keep an eye on that in 25. I would expect we'll see some more of those on that front as margins stay tight. So.
Mhm. Yeah. The December issue of CropLife, which features the top 100. I really do appreciate your analysis, and as we talked about recently, looking for the bright spots in what is an otherwise, certainly a tough year. No way to sidestep that. But yeah, I think hopefully mid-year, mid 25, we'll see. As you said, in prior years when it kind of starts off on a not so good foot, you know, after spring planting and things start getting underway, you can get a better assessment of how the year's going to go. And I'm hopeful that we'll see some positive things as well. May have to wait a while, but I think that'll start to appear mid
we,
year.
yeah, we will have to see. And my other big takeaway from this year, of course, two initials that have dominated the industry since, I'd say the middle part of 2024, and that is AI. And no, I'm not talking about active ingredients, which is initials we're used to and have been for the better part of 40, 50 years, but we're talking about artificial intelligence. There
Yes.
was plenty of activity in that on that front when it came to ag tech equipment. Of course, John Deere with See and Spray was sort of the one that kind of kicked it off, but we're seeing a lot of companies experimenting with AI, and particularly on the spraying front. And I know I was very encouraged because, again, a lot of times these new technologies come into play, but a lot of buzz regarding them, but the sales don't reflect that. But we did for our January issue of CropLife, we do our annual buying intention survey of ag retailers. And I was very, very pleased when we were talking about ag technology spending in 2025. 30% of the respondents said they plan to spend more, 1% to 11% more on AI technology for their operations in 2025 than they did in 2024. So again, that's a pretty good number. Another 48% said that they're going to spend the same amount. So again, you got 78% of the marketplace that's planning to do some significant spending on AI. So I imagine we're going to be seeing a lot of developments on that front in 2025. And of course, you can pay attention to CropLife and our trade show Tech Hub Live, which will come up in July, to follow some of these developments.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point because, as you said, while spending on other things are down, people are experiencing tighter economy and economics, and with regards to their farm and farm management operations and such. They're still, spending in the areas where they think they're going to get that immediate ROI, which again, AI. There's a lot that's happening there, just even some very practical stuff, not even the, big shiny next thing, but just some very practical things to streamline, to provide better, analysis and so forth. Just things that are, small tweaks, the cumulative effect of doing something, better, faster, more accurate. All those things make a difference. So I'm happy to see that, and I think that's a wise spend all the way around.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, we had a meeting a little earlier this month where one of the editors from our sister publication was at a European trade show, and they actually saw a unit on display that uses AI and laser beams to like identify weeds in the field and then zap them. So again, it'll be interesting to see if that becomes a little more widespread in 2025 here in the States, because again, I know weeds develop resistance to chemicals all the time, but I dare say laser resistance may be not something we see on the weed front anytime soon. Maybe Palmer, but nothing
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I know what you're referring to, and I think of it similar to drone technology, how it gets, incrementally, better and better, whether we're talking payload or whatever it is. And I see the same thing with that type of spraying, and seeing weeds, AI using lasers or spot spraying, whatever it is. It just gets better and better. So it's pretty
Yep.
cool.
Yep. So I'll kick it to you then, Laura. What are your two big takeaways, trends-wise, concerns, opportunities we saw in 24 as we move into the 2025 growing season?
Yeah, I think the two big things for me, and there was a lot. I mean, it
Oh
was
God, yeah.
nice to kind of think about this because there's a lot of things that we could have put. What are the big things? Were the big news, trends, developments? I think without a doubt, um, one item on my list was the EPA's work plan, and their strategy to comply with the Endangered Species Act. This has been, around for a couple years. They acknowledge that they need to do better. They didn't do things um, correctly in prior years, so now they're playing catch up, if you will. So um, for strategies in particular, with regards to agriculture, rodenticide, which would be the least impactful, but fungicide, secondly, insecticide, and herbicide. So EPA is releasing first in a draft form strategies for these four areas, and then a final form. So herbicide being probably the biggest of those four categories. The final herbicide strategy from the EPA was released in August, and it was I compare it to the Food Safety Modernization Act when that came into effect in
Yeah.
2011, and how huge that was for Food and Drug Administration. They hadn't seen anything that profound and significant in decades with regards to food safety. So I put this in a similar category in terms of widespread, wide ranging impact on ag. So after the herbicide strategy was released in August, we got a better idea what that means for the various players in the ag space, from the retailers to the manufacturers for farm chemicals, and ultimately the farmers and growers who, in this scenario, really are impacted because of how precise they have to analyze every part, every field, everything. It's not just, this is my operation. I farm 10,000 acres. We, are going to do this. They have to look at every part of their farm to understand where the potential is for spray drift or runoff, and what that means. The good news is, you know, so after that type of analysis, I mean, ultimately the goal is to reduce those buffer zones so that you're not taking viable acres out of production. Um, the good news in this scenario is that um, CPDA, Council of Producers and Distributors of Agrotechnology, ARA, um, CropLife America, American Soybean Association, a whole lot of partners and associations in our industry have really come together to not only take a look at this herbicide strategy, for instance, and understand the impact, but how do we respond to that? How do we mitigate the impact? Terry Kipley from CPDA was, he said, we need a bumper sticker, let farmers farm. And in a way that really captures, what this is about. So, in response to what the EPA is doing and the requirements and compliance and such, a focus on drift reduction adjuvants. CPDA has done phenomenal work, again, with their members, Nutrien, Wilbur Ellis, etc., um, to use drift reduction adjuvants as a way to mitigate, again, those buffer zones. Um, Darren Kopic and ARA have done a lot of work with technical service providers with regards to the certification requirements, getting funding for TSPs, again, as a way to work with the farmer grower to understand the impact, to come up with a plan. There's still a lot of questions, though. We, in the December issue of CropLife, it was polybagged with our special report, the ABCs of ESA, which is also available on croplife.com. Um, Kind of a good start, like, to, this is what's happening, this is what it means, this is what the associations and others are doing in response. But we're going to be covering this as we go into 25 as well, getting more specific now that, these final strategies are out there, looking at what the industry is doing to respond. So I would say that was top of my list. Just, this huge thing.
Yeah.
The other thing, and it's hard to, again, I look at, things that pop up, things that get resolved, but when we talk about supply chain in general, and the components of that, like, why does this matter? This seems like, who cares about the Red Sea? What's going on? And, ocean going vessels are being attacked. Well, the Suez Canal, and then what does that mean for the transportation? What does that mean when the Panama Canal, the water levels had dropped to historic lows, thereby limiting the number of vessels that could transit through the locks? Um, so just on the waterborne transportation part of supply chain, the Mississippi River, again, kind of really, really low water levels the last a couple 3 years, impacting barge traffic. Um, we have the International Longshore Association, so that would be the longshoremen on East Coast and Gulf Coast of U.S. As you recall, they went out on strike in October, went back to work with an agreement that they would revisit the contract and so forth. So they essentially signed a will keep things in place until January 15th. January 15th is right around the corner.
Oh,
Thus
God, yeah.
far, um, little news reports here and there. There's no indication that the two sides are any closer, really, to resolving the differences over, a slew of things. So again, what might be the impact of that? Um, and then really the big thing, with the Trump administration, the threats of tariffs, and with whether or not that's a bargaining tactic at this point, put our trade partners on their back foot so they're, more willing to talk. Either way, as we've talked about a lot, that uncertainty, that threat, you know, is what almost makes it worse than, okay, now we know what's gonna happen, so we can respond. It's that thing that's kind of, hanging over our heads. And then, really when I think about it, whether or not retaliatory tariffs become part of our trade policy going forward, um, the Trump administration wanting to kind of revisit the US Mexico Canada agreement. I mean, Mexico and Canada, two of our biggest trade partners by far. What does that mean? And again, it's all the trickle down effects. These things sometimes seem, far removed from our immediate business, what's in front of our face day in, day out. But again, the trickle down effect, what this means trade, is really tough. And even if you don't put tariffs in place, you could, really lean heavily on non-tariff barriers, whether that's anti-dumping, countervailing duties, phytocided sanitary restrictions, and non-GMO. There's a lot of ways to kind of meddle with trade if you wanted to. So I think those things are really, again, something that are just we're not going to be able to escape this next year. So again, they kind of follow us year in, year out. I think it's going to be a little more in the forefront going forward. So those are my two big ones. I think those are it.
Yeah, that's a lot. And again,
Yeah.
like you said, ESA, I mean, that's going to be rolled out over the next few years. Luckily, they didn't decide to do the entire crop protection category all at once. They staggered when those deadlines were coming out, those new rules were coming out. So that's a little helpful. And again, like you say, the strike, I know it was averted to January 15th, but as you pointed out, in another 2 weeks, we may be talking about that again and seeing what that means for the transportation requirements and worries that we'll have going into the 25 growing season. So viewers, stay tuned to CropLife Retail Week for information on those news items.
I think when we come back in the new year, we need to have okay, what are the bright spots? What if you and because I have some too, so I don't want to end on a down note all the time because it seems like I do that quite often. But
Well, and again, we'll
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 have
be
to
back
end
just after the new year, so we can revisit our happy thing then. because we'll see where things stand at that point. So.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, Miss Laura, then let's see if we can end on an even more positive note and see, in the 40 or so odd weeks you've played the game, how you do this week. Time for Fun with Numbers.
Can I guess how many candy canes are in the jar or something?
That would be festive, but since we're doing this post-Christmas, the candy canes have all been eaten. Putting into the hot chocolate is stir sticks. No, they're not around anymore. So
okay.
All right. Although I will tell you, when I covered the candy business for about 2 years back in the day, and the candy canes for December are always made in March and April. So they by the time you buy them in the store, they have actually been on in a warehouse someplace for a couple of months. So.
Nothing like
Not
shelf.
many people know that. If you want the fresh candy canes, I'm just telling you what I know. Anyhow, your number this week, it is 5.5 billion bushels. Got a corn question coming your way. So, all right, 5.5 billion bushels.
All right.
So, is 5.5 billion bushels, Miss Laura, is that A, the amount of corn used to make ethanol in 2024? Is it B, the amount of corn used for export in 2024? Is it C, the amount of corn ending stocks for 2024? Or is it D, the amount of spike seed balls I've picked up in my yard this year from my trio of sweet gum trees dropping them? And it certainly seems that way, as many times as I've had to rake those darn things up. And they like to bounce off the rake. It's no fun, let me tell you.
Okay, we got ethanol export. What was C again? I'm sorry, Eric.
C again, the amount of corn ending stocks for 2024.
I'm going with A, ethanol.
You are correct. You end on a high note. Congratulations. Yes, this was from our friends at USDA talking about corn for the calendar year 2024. They mentioned that corn used for ethanol totaled 5.5 billion bushels, and that was an increase of 50 million bushels from 2023. And if you're wondering, export volume 2.5 billion bushels, and ending stocks was 1.74 billion bushels. So,
okay. Cool.
So there you go. But yeah, the ethanol was the biggest of the number, and you got it correct. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank goodness. You can send an old candy cane my way then as my prize.
I can find one. I'm sure they'll be discounted in the stores right now. So, 50% off. So,
cool.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us for this final edition of CropLife Retail Week in 2024. We hope you enjoyed this year, and we'll be coming to you again in the new year. Until then, Happy New Year's, and we'll see you again soon. If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comments section below. Your feedback is important to us. We will try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.